Okay guys, so in this video we are going to experiment a little bit with basically an interesting transform that you can use in order to enhance your text. So let's get into it. Now the effect that we're going to work with is this very nice little effect that you see that when I hover my text it gets this nice little underline, and then when I hover, like I remove my mouse cursor, it disappears. Like, look at that, that's just gorgeous. So what's happening here is that I'm actually using just pure CSS to achieve this effect, which it used to be the case that you kind of had to use a little bit of JavaScript to get this going, but now we can actually use just CSS for it. So we have some basic stylings here. And then we have this hover element. As you saw earlier, this is just the hover element itself. So we put that as an inline block and we set its position to relative. Now, why do we set it to relative? Because we are going to use the before pseudo element. Now, the before pseudo element has a counterpart, which is basically the pseudo elements that you have is before and after, which is just this. Think of it as an element that you can attach to the element itself and have it just, you can provide it basic styling. That's enough for now. But basically what we want to do is we want to set its content to 0, to empty, because we don't want it to have any type of dimensions or anything like that. There's not supposed to be anything inside of it. If I put a letter like that and I just refresh, you see that now there's an A there. And that's not what we want. We want it to be completely empty, so that the element itself doesn't have any content. Then we set the position to absolute, and this is where that's the reason why we want to have the position, the relative position here, because if the parent element is not set to relative, setting something to position absolute will put it relative to the page itself. In other words, this element would actually, let's actually show you how that works. Let's do that. If you notice now that, hey, you may not notice, if you look at the bottom of the screen down here, did you notice that, hey, our border is down there now? That's exactly the effect that you get when you set something to be absolute, because without the relative positioning of the parent element, the absolute position is going to be relative to the page itself in this context, because there's no parent that has the position relative, right? And then we set the width to 100%, and then we use the transform here. So the initial scale x, now we're scaling, in other words, on the x-axis, we're going to scale our element to be 0. Why do we want to do this? Well, if I do something like that, and I refresh, you see that I have a full line here, which looks kind of weird, because what I want is to have the scale to be 0. In other words, I want this element to be completely hidden. I just want to shrink it down on the x-axis so that it doesn't have a dimension at all. And then we set the height to 2 pixels, and then we position it bottom left so that it is, so the position is bottom left of the element, or the parent element in this case, the hover element. We set the background to white, and then we have the transform origin, which basically means that I want to start my transformation from, how do I want to position my element, basically when I run the transform. So what I want is to start in the bottom right corner. That's where I want to start. And then when I run my transition, I'm just going to run it over 0.25 seconds, right? And when I hover my element, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to scale it up to 1. I just want to scale up to 1. And when I hover away, I'm going to basically scale it down to 0 again. So I'm going to scale it up to 100% and then scale it down again. That's all I'm going to do. And why I'm changing the transition origin is because I want this effect where you see that the line starts at the left corner, goes all the way to the right, and then I remove my hover, and then it goes all the way into the right. If I do something like this, like that, you see that the direction has now changed. Now it's just on the right side all the time, and that's the reason I want. I mean, this is a nice effect as well, but I thought this was this is a slightly nicer effect. I'm very pleased with it. So that's basically how you can use the before element and a little bit of CSS magic to enhance your text effects. Have a great day.